everyone, to today's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I am one of your hosts, Sammy Kinnison, here with Angela Belford. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Anne Bland. And I'm going to give you a moment to introduce yourself in a second. But first, I don't want to give away too much with your introduction. So we want to talk a little bit about what our topic is today. Angela, do you want to sort of tee us off in the start of this series that we're going on?
Yeah, so we are working our way through the book, Traveling Light. And, the very first chapter kind of sets us up on our hero's journey, which we've talked about. And now we are moving into chapter 2, where we are talking about the motivational triad. And the motivational triad is to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be efficient. It is just the wiring that's in our brain that is designed to keep us alive and safe and to make sure that our species continues. Because as we're going to talk about today in Be Pleasure, procreation falls under Be Create or Seek Pleasure. And so I love that the idea that we're wired to seek pleasure and that keeps procreation going. So it's one of the first commands in the Bible, actually, is to be fruitful and multiply. And so we got a chance to meet Anne. We're in a group together, and I read an article that she posted, and I got super excited. And then we interviewed her to kind of figure out what the topic was. And I'm like, oh, yay, somebody talk about seek pleasure. And then now I'm hugely entertained that we are going to talk about pleasure and sex, but we have to bring somebody in from Europe to give us this idea. So anyway, to kind of stretch our little American Puritan sensibilities over here, since I've already quoted the Bible, you can have a guess. However, I also will say that when I went to marriage therapy, my therapist said, there is no reason why your husband and you should still be married. It has to be because you have prioritized having a great sex life. And I was like, well, howdy doody. I'm really glad that was a priority for me early on. So I feel like I have some benefit from this, even though I feel real weird about talking about it. And I know why that is too. So, Anne, tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you came to be. And thanks for I know you have a lot of things you can talk about. So thanks for kind of being kind and letting us talk about specifically seeking pleasure.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really, really honored and pleased to be coming over from Europe to your end of the world. My name is Anne Bland, and I pronounce it in a Finnish way because I'm by birth Finnish, but I've lived in the UK for 16 years, so I can understand Anne Bland. But when you pronounce it as bland, it's like boring. And I said, hell no, I'm no bore, So bland by name, but not by nature. Yes. So I'm a tantric sex coach and relationship coach, and I'm also a podcaster too. And it was even for me, coming from quite liberal Finland, it was quite a big thing to actually start talking on a podcast about sex, relationships, and love. And then I thought, well, hang on, I've grown up in a country where it's okay to talk about sex. There's lots of programs about it. Children are quite used to nakedness because of our sauna culture, and it's not sexualized. It's not something weird. It's more kind of spiritual even, when you go to sauna. But yeah, so even when I started my podcast, it was a little bit kind of, how much can I talk about? And then I thought, hell yes, I'm going all in. And I'm kind of trying to bring in the other aspects of Tantra, which is also about creativity and your spirituality. So in ancient Tantra, they believe that sexual energy is also your spiritual energy. And I thought that was quite fascinating. So here I am. After my burnout, where I didn't have any energy at all, I thought, oof, I need to find pleasure again.
We share similar childhood stories from that perspective of kind of seeking pleasure after trauma kind of robbed that from us. Can you tell us briefly a little bit about that?
I think you're referring to my article, that interview that you read. Yes. So I did burn out I was a politician, I was a CEO, I had 3 kids, and sorry, I'm kind of already losing my voice talking about this. Excuse me. But it was a big thing to actually give that interview, because I thought it's time to actually come out with this, and I need to talk about it, and it's okay. I'm safe. I'm okay. So what my burnout, and I also had an accident. I was diagnosed PTSD, but I didn't realize. So that's post-traumatic stress disorder. And I didn't realize that it actually uncovered something even more sinister. Not that cycling accident only with a concussion, but also a childhood sexual abuse thing that I'd kind of pushed aside. And I never understood why I was kind of always seeking connection. I was always seeking validation. I was always kind of feeling that I'm not good enough, or I'm
Mm.
too much, or I need to achieve more. There's always this kind of perfectionist in me, really slacking me off if I'm not absolutely perfect. And nobody's perfect ever. I mean, that's just take that out of the equation immediately. But it was something that now makes sense, and also some kind of relationships I ended up with. I realized now that I didn't love myself. I was ashamed. I took responsibility for something that 6-year-old should never have done, and it was something that was robbed away from me. And I it was like that secretiveness
Mhm.
was the causation of that shame and I'm bad, when it was nothing to do with me in the first place. And then starting to reclaim that back has been a hell of a journey, honestly. I mean, it's been just so painful. And I thought healing, going down that kind of therapy, coaching, healing, doing all sorts of things is bloody hard work. It's honestly so
Yes.
hard work. And then I thought, there's something missing. Life can't be this miserable, honestly. Even when you're aware that something bad has happened and you start kind of unraveling it and kind of doing the work, then I realized that, hang on, I don't have pleasure in my life.
Mm.
And that's when the penny dropped. I need to find pleasure.
So much in that. The idea of, I used to think about, like, I remember before I did my first significant healing back when I was 24-ish, and I felt like I was in that movie that it's an Indiana Jones movie where Harrison Ford has to cross the chasm and there's no bridge there, and he has to take that first step and it feels like he's going to step into the abyss. That's what the healing journey felt like to me. And so what my goal is actually is to, like, do what he did, which is like throw the sand on the bridge so that other people can see, like, come over to the other side. And so I remember going and traversing that bridge and that cavern and going to the other side, because I just wanted to be normal. I wanted to be like everybody else. I want to be healthy. And if you're on audio, you're not seeing me or quote the crap out of normal, healthy, and like everybody else. And then when I got to the other side, I remember thinking, like, "Oh, crap. Most people don't take this journey." Like, I think I've spent my life trying to convince people to go on their healing journey, because I felt kind of alone once I got a lot healthier. Because most people, there's so many people in this world that will not, maybe they hear all of us say that it's too hard. It's not too hard. It's hard. It's not too hard. They say it's hard, so they won't take the journey to health and to wholeness. And so I think that I've always thought that was the thing, but listening to you, I wonder if it's because we don't talk enough about the benefit and the pleasure and the peace and the upside on the other side of the journey. Because we're
Oh,
so where I've felt myself just baffled that people would rather just stay in pain. The pain I know is more comfortable than this harrowing journey across. to this potential pleasure that I have no idea. And we've probably disconnected from pleasure at such a level in trying to numb our pain that we can't even conceptualize that. So how did you figure out pleasure? What was that journey like? And I hope it's less painful and hard than
Yeah, I really hear you. I mean, that kind of jumping into the abyss is just, it feels like that. I'd like to really validate that it feels like that. But actually, the first step is always the most painful. It's most scariest. And once you've done it, you realize it wasn't that bad after all. So that's the key. It's the key. It's that because we are in our heads, we're going in circles. We're just because we're not speaking it out. We're not talking about it. The shame becomes such a monster. It becomes so painful. And we think we're the only ones who's going through this. And it can't be done. There's no role models. It's nobody's talking about this. So I must be the stupid one or the foolish one or the incompetent, whatever it is, that the stories, the narratives we keep playing in our heads. And I think that's why, the whole perfectionist idea kind of needs to unravel too. We need to kind of take the first step, even though it's not going to be the way we wanted it to be. There needs to be that kind of kindness and self-compassion. And where do we get that if nobody's shown us the model? Then there needs to be more discussion, more understanding, more heartfelt connection that you're okay. So ideally you have somebody walking with you that path. And I think for me, there's so many things. It's not a linear journey for me.
Mm-mm.
It's like it's 2 steps forward, 5 backwards, and then you
Yes.
have a couple of side steps, and it's like kind of, is this what kind of dance is this, for goodness sake? But it's something that I felt that I really was compelled to explore more, and I went back into my body and kind of feeling what feels good in my body. And it can start even that, why do I punish myself even when I put cream on my face? It's like I'm rubbing it. Why can't I just feel, how does it feel to actually touch my skin? How does it feel to have something nourishing to eat, or something that is good for me, or just pausing and kind of taking a step back and kind of, what do I need right now? What does my body feel is good to me right now? It doesn't have to be amazing and awesome and perfect and all these kind of fireworks, but what is it that I really feel I need right now at this in this moment? And I think little by little, there is that kind of slowness where it's okay to start feeling. And once the feelings start coming up, in Tantra, they actually teach that emotions they don't kill us. We think that they will. If the fear will kill us, the anger, the sadness. If I now start crying, I will never stop.
Never stop.
I will drown the world with my tears. And that's all BS, to be honest. But it's the feeling, that scare, the fear. And what Tantra teaches, that even emotions can be they can be transmuted into energy.
Mhm.
And that's one of the amazing practices I teach for my coaching clients. And it's what's interesting is that there is also kind of a hierarchy of emotions, where all of a sudden, when you allow the tears to come, the anger comes, but eventually the joy comes and the pleasure comes. So it's what is underneath that, and getting curious and feeling, what are these emotions? Oh, I'm feeling pressure in my chest now. It feels, so heavy. I'm curious what's happening in my body right now. And then when you get curious about that and you start speaking from that pain, from that sensation, bodily sensation, you start getting more wisdom. And then it's kind of, okay, so if that's the truth, that I feel like crying, what if I did allow myself to cry? What if I did allow myself to punch a couple of pillows if I'm getting that angry? and what's happening after that? And then all of a sudden you realize you're laughing your heads off because, it's just something so liberating, so delicious, and so juicy. It's something, there is some fun in that in the end, but it is, I think I'm digressing here. You did ask specifically about pleasure, and
No, I
and
think
it,
this has
yeah.
been really great. I have what's interesting in my experience with this, I have two small children, the 4-year-old and the 1-year-old, and I feel really passionate about helping them learn how to identify their emotions and how to express their emotions in a like healthy and normal and natural way. Within that has been some reparenting of myself. And I remember there was one time I was talking to my oldest son, Henry, and I was like, I was like, how are you feeling? I don't know. And I was like, okay, it seems like you might be feeling angry or frustrated. Do you think you feel angry? And there's a point where as a toddler, like he doesn't have the words. And so this started out with I would give him some words. Is this how you feel? And give him a couple of options. He's now, after probably 2 years of doing this, he can tell me, this is how I feel. I feel angry right now. And I say, okay, what can we do about that? How do you need to help express that? Do you need to scream really loud? Do you need to punch your pillow? I it's not okay to hurt people or to hurt things in our anger. So we're not going to punch a hole in the wall, and we're not going to flail and kick our brother. If you're angry, by all means, we're going to express that in a way that keeps you safe and keeps other people safe. So what can we do? And the first couple of times asking, like, what can we do? I'm over here like, I don't know what we can do because I don't know how to express my own anger in a healthy and normal way. And so there was a part of that learning that I'm really grateful we started this when he was 2 and does not have a lot of memories of this because it started out rough. And I am really proud of my commitment over the past couple of years to this, and that it now is in a much better place. And I don't tell my kid that he can't scream. Do we make a point that we scream? Like, if we need to scream, we're probably going to go to our bedroom and I'll sit with you and do it there, because we do want to be courteous and considerate of how our expression of our emotions can impact others. And screaming at the dinner table while everybody else is eating does hinder everybody else's ability to eat peacefully. So that's fine. We will go somewhere else. But if you need to scream, let's do it. Let's go scream. And I don't know, all these things. I've been really proud of how much work I've done. It's not perfect by any means.
Good, good,
And
good. It shouldn't be perfect.
right, right. And I
Oh, we've
just
had a whole episode on perfectionism, and Sammy's like,
Oh, good, good, good,
recovering
good.
perfectionist right here.
100%.
We
Excellent.
think that it should be a syndrome. Like, there's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
imposter syndrome, and the ADD is called a disorder. And we're like, perfectionism should be labeled as a syndrome or a disorder because it is absolutely detrimental anyway. But
yeah.
yes.
Well, so I'm just eager to see what Henry's life is like when he's an adult, and he has been practicing since he was 2 years old, identifying what is coming up in his body. How does he need to express that? How do you need to communicate your needs to the people around you? Do you need time by yourself? Do you need time with somebody else? Like, what a world he's going to live in with so much peace and stability, regardless of whatever is actually going around him, because has that inner peace. Anyway, I'm excited about that and to see what his future looks like.
So I'm
But
gonna
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna push back because I'm gonna say now, what have you? How does that apply to you? Because I don't know that, like, do you feel like you're better 2 years later
Oh,
after showing him, and do you still struggle to effectively express your emotions?
I do think I'm better. I do think that the practice is like I am also growing and am more grounded. I think that I have more uh buried,
Yeah.
not trauma, but like I have more things to like push past of like when
Yeah.
I was a kid, this like I don't know, I have more internal thoughts and internal dialogue that at 2 and at 4 he doesn't have as much of that internal dialogue. He's not
Cool.
have the perfectionism and an internal critic, really squared away in their spot over 20 years that you have to kind of just do more work to uproot it.
Okay.
which I think is where I'm at. Um,
I was just curious if it was helping you,
oh,
like
yes, it is
doing
helping me.
showing him, is it helping you? Because I learn a lot about how to parent myself and how to talk to myself by watching how you talk to Henry. Because I'll be like, if my inner critic gets going real loud, I'll be like, is that how Sammy would talk to Henry? No. Okay, then I probably shouldn't talk to myself. Like, anyway, so I've learned
Well,
a whole lot.
and I sort
Can
of,
I celebrate? Can I celebrate you? Because what
yes.
Please.
you're doing, I mean, I think this is so beautiful. You are raising conscious men, future
Yes.
men.
Yes.
How beautiful is that? And I think there's more peace in world if we have more conscious men. Women hardly
Mm.
ever start wars in the world, and there is that kind of thing. I always say that pleasure positive and happy people don't start wars, and that's why we also have peace.
Mhm.
So I just want to celebrate you
Yes.
so much.
Well, and I think that that is part of where some of my commitment comes from in that I have 2 boys. I I'd be dishonest to say that there wasn't a part of me that had hoped for a girl and that wanted like a sweet little compassionate feminist to get to raise. And I still have 2 sweet little compassionate feminists that I get to raise.
Yep,
And there's so much more
exactly.
work that needs that there's so many barriers that men face to feeling their emotions that women don't have to face. Like I wasn't told, to man up as a kid. Like I was not ever told that to man up, stop crying. And like I know that my brother was, like my younger brother was constantly, he was called a crybaby and all sorts of things. And what like just it's hard to see that. And so yeah, being able to raise two boys to become men who can feel their feelings very confidently, who can then engage in relationships from a place of like vulnerability to
Yes.
also, I don't, there's a weird part where I kind of hope that at some point their emotions may not feel as vulnerable. It might feel transparent. Like I want to be open and transparent, but maybe it's not as hard. I don't know. We'll see.
It's not a bad thing, honestly. Vulnerability is power.
Hmm.
This is one of the things that I think in Western world we don't realize. Your power lives in your solar plexus. Often people, women especially, say that, oh, there's a knot in my solar plexus. I can't, it's like a stone or something. And actually, when you start becoming more vulnerable, you take that leap, into the abyss, whatever it is, even if it's just kind of saying, look, I don't know, just
Mm.
get, not allowing that perfectionist to come up and kind of saying, look, I don't know, and this is what I feel and I don't know what to do. And once you start showing up from that vulnerability, you gain more power. It's the same coin but two sides. And I think there is a lot of toxic masculinity in the world because men don't allow themselves, and the conditioning has been not to be vulnerable. But I mean, there's and I kind of feel that in before I've come a lot from that kind of pushy, perfect, I know it all, I can be achieving and I can do this and the other and everything perfectly. And then I'm wondering why my relationships don't work that well. And once I started to come up from that vulnerability place, saying that actually, I'm sorry, but I need to now cry because this is just overwhelming or this is too much. And then I get told, you are the most beautiful now that you're crying. I've never
Mm.
seen you so beautiful because you're true, you're authentic. You're not trying to hide your wounds. You're not trying to hide your trauma. And I'm
Mm.
so, that's weird. That's completely opposite. That's not true. That can't be true. Mascara all over my face. This is my hair
Yeah.
is, a mess. It's like, for goodness sake, be real. If we can be real, human to humans,
Mhm.
regardless what gender we are, and allow the emotions, allow the vulnerability to come up, there is so much beauty and power in that. And more people have that consciousness, more chance we have as a human race on this planet to have peace, happiness, and pleasure.
I like that. I'm also somebody who's not, I don't necessarily know that my face is beautiful when I cry. There's that movie like single tear running down your face where she just looks serene. And I'm like, snot is pouring out of
Yes.
my nose. And it's like, you look beautiful. And I'm like, I don't, you're clearly not telling the truth because this is gross. Like,
Literally, we call it ugly crying.
yeah, we do. But I do think that there is something, it's more than, it's not what does your face look like and what does the snot on your face look like. It is the inner beauty and the realness that you are bringing to the table, that it is really, really amazing. I love that.
So to go back off our little rabbit trail, which I love our rabbit trails. They're my favorite. I almost feel like there should be a disclaimer on our podcast that say might need to have a little ADD to follow. But one of the things I picked up on what you were saying was that like when we aren't able / willing, whichever, to feel what's going on in our body, that's going to significantly derail pleasure. So
Yes.
I'm imagining somebody going, wait, no. I don't want to get into my emotions. I don't want to get into all of that stuff, but I would really like to have a better sex life. I would really like to have better orgasms, right? Like, and we think that that we're capable of having those two things. And what you're saying is that no, like a willingness to feel your feelings is actually what leads you to more pleasure.
It's
counterproductive.
it's a well-known thing within tantric and maybe I need to actually define what tantra is.
Yeah.
Because somebody just told me the other day that, oh, you're preaching polyamory, it's just cheating, tantra is all about cheating. And I said, what are you talking about? No, what are you talking about? And it's something that apparently in certain countries, and might be yours, I'm not sure, but there are people who are promoting that kind of way, and I think it's completely misconstrued and misunderstood. For me, tantra, as I said earlier, it's like an enlightenment path, but it's a fun path because you can use your pleasure and sex to become enlightened. And it's also a shared experience with a partner. I mean, if somebody wants to be polyamorous, it's not me to judge. Tantra doesn't judge anything or criticize anything, but it transforms everything. So I think that's a beautiful way of saying. And there is classical tantra, which is all about philosophy, principles, the whole spiritual side. But in the 70s, maybe 60s, when tantra came to America from the East, it had a big sex attached to it. And I think that's where the sort of near tantra has had its maybe a bad reputation, that it's kind of it was all the flower power, all the kind of hippie style, in that era. And we need to understand that it comes from a particular time in history. But now I think we can really define it as we want and what works. And for me, it is very much about having, as I said earlier, the healing path needs another balancing path, which is the pleasure path. So for me, I'm basically saying that pleasure is your birthright and you can reclaim it. And it's something that we can really help us to become more true to ourselves, to become more authentic ourselves. And I think that's a kind of a thing that you were asking there, that all this emotional stuff, no, hell no, I just want better orgasms. And why not? That's true as well. It's not exclusive. So you can have better sex, but you can also have sacred sex. And if you want to have sacred sex, it's very much about bringing into integration your shadow sides, whether it's something that you've pushed aside, like me and my trauma. That was something that didn't exist, period. And then I was so surprised why my relationships failed. And I was unhappy and even depressed clinically. So it all makes sense now. But I really want people to understand that to become more authentic with yourself, you need to embrace your emotions. You don't have negative or bad emotions. They just are. They are just energy. That's what Tantra teaches. And it's the same with neurosystems. When the new kind of neuroscience teaches we have three-part brain. We have the cortex, the most modern, where we think, and we have that critical mind, and we have the imposter syndromes or whatever. We were perfectionists, and we have the affirmations. We can work in that level, but it's quite young part of our brain. We have the limbic system, which is more about the emotions that we've talked about. But then we also have reptilian brain, which is all about primitive urges. It's that kind of primitive brain where the sex, kill, all this kind of from cave times come, that, if we don't kill that tribe, they're going to kill us. Or if we don't have more babies, we're not going to survive as a tribe. So there are a lot of things that come from that very, very ancient conditioning of human being. And that's why, for instance, feeling that I'm, for me, talking about sex all of a sudden publicly on a podcast, felt a bit weird. I said, I'm coming from Finland. This shouldn't be a problem for me. I should be able to talk about sex. Why am I feeling, oh, I'm not sure if this is safe. And then I realized it's that old DNA that if you start doing something that is considered wrong or sinful or bad or not polite or not good for a woman to say or do, then it's unsafe. Because if you do something that is not in your community allowed, you will be excluded and you will die. In cave times, you couldn't hunt, you couldn't gather, you couldn't keep the fire on your own. If the tribe decided to get rid of you, you would die. So for me, even talking about pleasure, it was just a little nag. It wasn't a big thing. But I recognized that this is something that is not coming from me. This is not my experience. So then I realized that, okay, we have this thing called nervous system, and, there are things that can prevent us. So just, again, having information, having knowledge, having awareness, consciousness is helpful. And now I've already forgotten what the question was. I'm so sorry, Angela.
No, I thought that was wonderful, because
brilliant.
if somebody hasn't read Traveling Light, you could probably skip to like chapter 3 or 4 now, because that's it. There's a lot
Yeah.
of that.
Brilliant.
It talks about right. And it was like, it talks just about that idea. I was like, and I want to share Angela. She talks about her book all the time. Let me talk about it for a second. But that idea that it feels like I'm going to die, that if I get kicked out of the community, I'm going to die. If I find pain, if pain is something that I have not avoided, I could die. And all of these things, being able to comfort yourself almost, or reassure yourself to say, yes, this is an intense feeling. This is an intense pressure that I like. There's something in me that says I could die if I do this thing, and I'm not going to die. And I'm not in a caveman time, and am I going to be lonely? Like, maybe I'll be lonely, but that doesn't necessarily mean I will die. Like, there's all sorts of things to be able to do it anyway, to push yourself past that and to take that first step. Because I think that's where, when both of you are talking about sort of taking the step into the chasm, there's the fear that I could die. If I face these emotions, that could be too much for me, and it could be too much, and I'm going to fall down the chasm. There's not anything there. Everybody else has said there's a path there, but I can't see it. And I'm going to be the one to take a step out, and it's going to fall through and I could die. You're telling yourself you're not going to is a really brave act, and really important to, if you want to take that step to move forward.
Well,
and you're not going to be lonely, because there's going to be somebody else who's done it anyway. And there's somebody else outside there that can, bring their hand and say, come on, let's go.
Right. I think that's what, that as I listen, that's the goal. That's the reason why we cover topics here that are maybe stuff that people haven't heard about or they didn't know. One of our most popular podcasts is what is your attachment style, anxious or avoidant? And it was like, I didn't know I had abandonment issues until my therapist, like, what do you mean you don't know that? Right. And then you've been doing this for 19 years. I'm like, I didn't know it was a diagnosis. And so, and it's interesting because I want to say to anybody out there that feels like they're about to step over the chasm, you're not alone. There is community. I think that's why community is so important. And it's hard if you are deep rooted in a community. And I can say this as somebody who was raised in a very, conservative, faith-based part of our country, and say that it feels like you are alone. But I promise you, especially in this day and time in the internet, there are people that no matter what you've gone through, I promise there are people that are willing, because the most joyful thing for me as a survivor of whatever I survived is to be able to offer that hope and that guidance, because I've learned that I spent a lot of my years healing so that I could help other people, and now understanding, no, I heal for myself. And the bonus is that I get to help other people. But it does sometimes, when there's somebody that's gone through something, that they're telling your story and you're like, oh no, I know exactly. I experienced a similar thing. I may not know exactly how you feel, but I experienced something very similar, and something that felt like it didn't make any sense. Like, why did I go through this thing? What was the purpose? What was the point of that experience? And then to be able to share hope for somebody else, it's like, okay, I'm not saying it excuses the pain you went through, but sometimes for me, it can give it meaning and be like, oh, well, at least I got to help somebody else on their journey. And the things I learned from my pain, now I can and share, and it's just rewarding and it's fulfilling, at least for me. So you're not alone. Take the step. How would somebody begin the step of exploring pleasure? And I know we've talked about emotions and getting comfortable with that, but let's go. Okay, so I guess it's not first step, but it would be next, some of the next steps. What does this look like?
I think curiosity is the first thing, and I would not go out in the internet with this one though. I think this is the one thing that I think internet might be
Yeah.
damaging, and I don't want to judge again, but there is so much content out there that is not healthy
Mm.
and that is abusive. That is yeah, it's not nice. So I would really get curious. I mean, there's like, I want to, and this is something because the sexuality and the innocence was taken away from me when I was 6. Uh, I feel that there's that innocence I needed to reclaim back too, about pleasure and kind of about my body and exploring and kind of feeling into, oh, what does feel good to my body, and not kind of needing to have external stimulation if we're talking about sexual pleasure. And then the next one I would say is playfulness. It's kind of, just a little bit exploring more and kind of what feels good to me, and having that, innocent curiosity, but then playfulness, and an adventure, sense of adventure. How do my breasts want to be touched? And down there, and is there something else? Is it my ears? Are there an erogenous zone? Or, how do I want to sound like? If I breathe, there's I'm just taking deep breaths when I touch myself. How does that feel? And then on the exhale, I can actually sound. It might be a sigh, it might be some moan or whatever, but it's the kind of, we are a whole human being with emotions, with thoughts, and with our body sensations. So we need to bring all that to that particular moment, to that present moment. And what helps us to be in the present moment and quieten that critical mind or the perfectionist mind is to use your 5 senses. What can you see? What can you hear? What can you taste, touch, even smell? So it's that kind of being fully here and now, is that then you allow those feelings to come, and all of a sudden you feel sorrow, but you don't know why, while you're touching your breasts. Let that come and go, because most probably if you don't resist it, it will go. And And then I suppose, it's a little bit like chronological child development of sexuality. There is that innocence, and then playfulness, and then exploration. When you become teenagers, you kind of, ooh, show you yours and I'll show you mine, and kind of, starting to really have that kind of honoring, even that is beautiful. That is actually beautiful. And then if you want to take it into the tantric sacredness side, then it's about how can sex become a sacred practice as well. So it's really about, for me, it's very much about being in your body here and now, being curious, open-minded, adventurous, allowing anything that needs to come, whether it's emotions, whether it's sounding, whether it's breathing, whether it's movement, just liberate yourself and really have so much self-compassion, so much self-love. And I think that on its own is just such a beautiful balancing path for all that healing and hard work. Just have some fun and just be open-minded, allow whatever needs to come to your awareness and your experience, and embrace it fully.
Would you say that this is a process that is not fast? That I might, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to set the goal this weekend, I'm going to learn what brings me pleasure, but more of like, it's July 2023. By July 2024, I want to have more pleasure. We have a wheel of life where we talk about play and fun. And I just imagine those of us that are recovering perfectionists, like, okay, now I got to get good at it. But like, really what you're advocating here is for something that is a much more fluid, give yourself space and time. Would you agree?
And have safety. You need to have safety in that. I think that's it's okay to touch yourself. It's okay to self-pleasure. It's okay to feel good. And when you have been in pain so long, it's a big thing to allow yourself to have pleasure. So it can be very unsafe. It can feel really not okay. So I think that's one of the things I would like to emphasize. But I mean, in Tantra, lots of people think that it's very slow. That's not necessarily so. It depends on your mood. It depends on if you're on your own with a partner. It doesn't matter. It's again, I would take you how your body wants to do and feel and experience. But yeah, you can do intentions. Why not? By next Friday, I'll have 5 orgasms.
That's awesome.
But why not?
Um,
It's okay.
we have talked all this time, but we haven't actually said like the name of your podcast, which is right, Selfishly Happy. And I think that, right, isn't that the name of it? Did I get that right?
That's my brand.
Your
That's
brand.
my brand.
Yes,
Yeah.
your brand. But I think that idea of, how you can be selfishly happy, and it doesn't have to be for other people. It doesn't have to be for somebody else to get healing. There is permission to just seek this for your own goodness, and that's okay. And I really like that concept and that idea, because as a recovering perfectionist, there is so many things that I feel like I have to work against some of my wiring to be like, no, no, you have to do these things for other people to show you're enough, to do whatever it is. No, you can just seek pleasure, and that's fine. And it doesn't have to be for this big purpose and reason, other than it feels good and you feel good, and why not? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have more thoughts on sort of that
Yeah, I
selfishly
mean,
happy
definitely.
idea?
Yeah, definitely. That's the way I've just recently kind of realized how I want to do it, in terms of creating courses and, going beyond my podcast, which actually is called Tantric Sex for Lovers and Others.
Okay, thank you.
But also, in terms of Selfishly Happy, I'd like to create an academy, where people can learn, but also it's very much about that. If I think, going back to the Bible, Bible says that love your neighbor like, well, please correct me. I'm not a
Love
Bible
your neighbor
expert,
as
but
yourself. I make a
yes,
big deal.
exactly.
It's as
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly. This is the point. If you don't love yourself, how can you love the neighbor or do to the others what you want to be done to yourself? Well, you need to do it yourself as well.
Mhm.
So there are all these things that are two ways. And even Tantra says that what's in is out there, what's above is below. So there is that kind of oneness in a way. And selfishly happy for me, and I can only talk about from my own experience, I was a politician. I was worried about climate change. It made me really anxious. I was a green politician. I was a CEO of a social enterprise because I wanted the business world to be more compassionate and conscious and not just a money-making machine for a few. So there's lots of things I wanted to change in the world, and I burned out. And then I realized that I was always trying to change my partners. Oh, you shouldn't be like that. You should be like this. And so, no, that doesn't work. That really backfires badly. So what I realized is that I can only change myself. And when I change myself, if I become happier, I'm more, pleasurable to be with because I have pleasure myself. I'm not outsourcing it to somebody else, that you need to give me pleasure or you need to make me happy. It's much easier to be with me if I'm already covering my own needs of pleasure, of happiness, and even peace. And that will change people around me. And it will have that ripple effect that there was some guy in South Africa. He said that we'd had lots of conversations on a kind of a mastermind. And he said, all of a sudden, maybe months after we started weekly calls, he said, I can't believe you're actually preaching selflessness by saying that you need to become selfishly happy. And I said, well, yes, if you're happy, you're actually happy to then love others and serve others. If you're caring for yourself, you're happy to care for others. And yes, I can survive on my own. I have most of my life, but I'm thriving because of you all. I'm thriving because of other people. So there is that kind of, yeah, okay, you can become self-aware what you need and how you're going to get your needs met. Then you're having self-mastery, how you're going to have those processes and practices of pleasure or whatever it is, and then or emotions or your thoughts, and then you have self-expression. How are you going to take that all to the world? What is your true voice? What is your authenticity? What is your mission and purpose in life? What kind of an impact and legacy do you want to leave? So it's that kind of a 3-step process that I've just recently kind of fine-tuned, that what selfishly happy revolution to me means. And yeah, I want to bring orgasms into that as well. How to heal the world one orgasm at a time.
I love it.
I have one more question kind of before we start to try wrap this up. If I am someone who's listening to this episode and is like, man, seek pleasure, like that can't only be about sex, right? Like, surely it's got to be about other things.
Yeah.
Earlier when you were talking even just about like, putting cream on your face and how does this feel? It made me think of there's so many things I think in this world that can bring pleasure, even if it isn't sexual pleasure. What are do we have brief thoughts on that? Like, it's not only sexual pleasure, but I do think it can be a big part of pleasure, and it's definitely not the only thing to find pleasure in the world, right? I
Well,
don't know.
can I ask you what brings you pleasure?
Oh, so many
Mm.
things. I love rain. This has been one right now in this season. There's just been a lot of rain, and it is something that I love to watch it. I love to be in the rain and feel the rain, and just there's something about that is my like favorite weather and favorite thing in nature is to be outside during the rain.
And
Um,
smell after rain.
oh
Did you know
yes.
that there is a word for it?
No.
It's apparently, if it's raining outside, I'm just looking out now. It's called petrichor.
Okay, petrichor.
Yeah,
I
I think, do
yeah.
double check. But my daughter told me because I was kind of, oh, doesn't it smell? Oh, it smells so lovely after rain. I said, yeah, it's called petrichor.
Oh,
I
Love
I
that.
love that. Yeah, that's something that brings me a lot of pleasure. There's other things as well, but that's the one that's been on my mind a lot
Yeah.
lately. And I think there's just so much in this world to bring pleasure, and it doesn't always mean work. It can be work. It can be finding fulfillment in using your talents and your potential to just
Yeah.
the fullest.
Fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much of that. And anyway, I just wanted to add that note that none of us
The
think that sexual pleasure is the only pleasure, even though this is what we've talked about today. There's
the
so many other
Yeah.
perfect
things.
the perfect creme brulee. So much
Ooh.
pleasure. Can you tell I'm marketing for a French restaurant right now?
But
So
it
excited
comes
about
back
the
to, doesn't it? It comes back to your five senses again, doesn't it?
yes.
Pleasure is very much about being present. It's that kind of mindfulness. What can I see that gives me pleasure? I'm looking at the beautiful fields and forests. It's just amazing. That gives me pleasure. It gives me pleasure to hear beautiful music, or my great niece
Mhm.
to laugh, and 2-year-old, you know doing all the things that they beautifully do. And yeah, and how do I want to touch myself? Or do I like to, what kind of clothes do I feel
Mm,
are beautiful on my skin? you
mhm.
know all that kind of stuff.
I think that's wonderful.
I love it. The For a little while I was a health coach, and well, still I guess do coach some people, but the people would be like, "Oh, well, I had this food and it was off plan." And I'm like, "But did you enjoy it? Or did you beat yourself up the whole time?" Because if you like just constantly beat yourself up and you got no joy and no pleasure from it, then yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. But if you can like really taste the food, like taste what you're eating, because when you can sit there and enjoyment, I'm like, you can burn through the calories like nothing,
Yeah.
but most of the time we're just like shoveling food or drink as fast as we can. So even like a really yummy cocktail that tastes really, but like taking a moment to taste. We went on this really neat walking tour in Costa Rica in San Jose, and it was a nighttime walking brewery tour. And so when we went into the first brewery, the guy's like, "We're going to use all of our senses. The first one, we're going to look at the beer. Now we're going to look at taste how it goes over what does it feel like over your tongue? So that's your taste molecules. Smell of it. Listen. Oh, we said, what's hearing? And he said, cheers." When you clink the glasses, that's the hearing. And then he, by the end of the evening, and then he would say, like, take a bite of the French fry and now take a drink of the beer. Now, how does the beer flavor taste different when it contrasts with the potatoes? Anyway, it was amazing. And by the end of the night, he hypothesized we only have one sense, and it's touch. He said, really, the beer is touching your taste buds. The smell, the molecules are touching your olfactory glands. The sounds are touching your eardrums. And then, of course, touch by itself. Why am I missing one of the
Sight.
senses? Sight. Oh, sight. It's like light, and things are just touching your optical nerve. And so we were like, whoa, like this was the most philosophical brewery tour we ever could possibly
Indeed.
imagined.
I like that
And
he brought that up at the end of the night after however many beers you've already done. He
yes.
doesn't bring that up at the beginning when you haven't had any beers.
Yeah.
You
Anyway, it
can
was
also
fun.
take that. You can also take that into relationships,
Absolutely.
because you can really play that way, sensual play. You
Yeah.
can feed each other food. You can show things to each
Mhm.
other. It doesn't have to be about intercourse and orgasms. It can be just sensual play.
Mhm.
How cool is that?
That's
Mhm.
awesome. Okay, Anne, this has been amazing. What would you like to leave our listeners with? And then we'll ask you also where they can find you after that.
Oh gosh, what do I want to leave them with? I think well, let me feel into it, actually, not thinking. It's the permission to feel that pleasure is okay and you are okay. Whatever you choose, you're okay. And it's just taking one step at a time. And I actually do have a little ebook called Pleasure is Your Birthright, 7 Holistic Sex Tools. And even though it says sex tools, I'm actually talking about not sex toys. I'm talking about intention, focus, sound, movement, energy, and so on. So it's very much about these awareness tools. So yeah.
That's fantastic. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Thank
And
you.
where can people find you?
Well, it seems I'm all over the internet, but I don't know how good that is. So it's
On Instagram?
Selfishly happy with Anne Bland, and my website is selfishlyhappyu.com.
Perfect. We'll put those in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. And thank you, Anne, very specifically for engaging in this conversation, helping us to just think more about the pleasure in our lives and inviting us to experience that. It's been really wonderful.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. We hope you guys go and have a freaking awesome day.